So I really appreciate you all joining this afternoon. As I said, I've been working with farmers markets for a couple of decades and know a number of you on this call. And I look forward to learn a little bit about what's going on around the state as I share some of the findings of not just this survey that we did, but just talk a little bit about some of the economic impact of markets, some strategies that we recommend, and resources and tools that are available across the state. But I'm going to really highlight by just talking about this this impact of what happened with COVID. And so the areas that I'm going to highlight today as far as the farmers markets is I'm going to highlight initially talking about the results of the survey. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about just some local food marketing strategies. And hopefully all of this will somewhat align as I talk about some of the changes with consumer purchasing shopping patterns and their perceptions as they respond throughout this. Also highlight some of the farmers market resources that are available in Arkansas and then as well in USDA. And then close out with some of those national surveys highlighting what consumer perceptions are and some of those changes that have resulted from the crisis. Something I want to highlight, and I love this comes from a friend of mine out of Texas, is that even though we're talking about direct markets today, is that local food systems, it is part of a system. So as you think about your markets, think about the ways that even in this present time that your markets can be innovative in terms of capturing some of these different system aspects. You know, that the market goes directly from the production to the consumers and those institutions, but there's some marketing, there's some value-added processing, there's some branding, there's even some recovery that can happen that you can be innovative with in terms of your markets and how you can serve your communities and help enhance those vendors that are serving at your markets. So I always just like to throw that whole systems piece in there to think about it as we get into talking specifically about farmers markets. So when COVID hit the state, middle of March, I had some conversations with the Arkansas Farmers Market Association, Jeremy Adams, and just wanted to get a feel for saying, can we see our markets going to open up in this space? This came out almost right after the Ag Department and Health Department released their guidelines. And so we wanted to try to get some information, statewide perspectives on what was going to be the results or what we anticipated to happen. But before I get into the survey results, I just want to talk a little bit about, because I'm always asked, well, what are the direct sales in the state of Arkansas? The latest statewide available data that we have would be the Census of Agriculture from 2017. Across the country, it's 6% of U.S. farms, and they have a figure that they estimate agricultural food items that are directly marketed to consumers. 6% of U.S. farmers are engaged. In Arkansas, that's 4%, a little bit lower, but 4% of our 42,000, almost 42,625 farmers are engaged in direct sales to consumers. The estimated value of sales they give is 9.2 million in terms of total value across the state. And because there's been such growth in local food systems and abilities to capture that, the 2017 census started capturing a new figure, and that is farm sales directly to institutions. And so they captured an additional 225 farms that were selling directly to restaurants, directly to institutions. And that's a figure that's going forward that USDA is going to start using as a benchmark to help explain what's going on within the local food system. So as I said, in March, when we started getting guidance from the governor as far as COVID, collaborated with AFMA, the Arkansas Farmers Market Association, to come up with an online survey. This survey was directed at the farmers market managers. We tried to identify the total population of market managers across the state and tried to reach out to them either directly or indirectly to try to get a response, to see what were their plans. In Arkansas, most of the markets open up around May, but some are already open, some actually open year round. But this was going to be an online survey that was promoted broadly to those market managers for roughly 2 weeks. Launched it in late March and then closed it in early April. What we did is, again, trying to go to the entire population. USDA's Ag Marketing Service actually has a place where farmers markets can self-register. They report 112 farmers markets operating across the state. Something about that database is that that's like a self-registration, because in the state of Arkansas, there isn't a specific agency that manages or says, okay, you're now a farmer's market. It's almost like someone says, I'm a farmer's market and I want to register. You can contact AMS and get on that listing. So what that database at AMS is that there's 112 farmers markets that are operating across 60 counties. So 75 counties in the state. So not every county has a market, and a number of the counties, specifically our urban areas, have multiple markets. The results of our survey was that 45 market responses, completed survey responses. And give you that background on our farmers markets, just to say that these survey responses are more representative of our city areas versus our our rural areas. I would say our larger cities, our population centers, and those areas surrounding those. Because this response reflects 40% of the state's AMS registered markets. As we looked at that, and again, administered in late April, some markets had already been open. And so in our question says, do you plan to open, or are you already open? Roughly 70% of those markets had plans to open. If you look at this response, that 2% only represents one market. So only one market indicated that they would not open. The remaining 29% said they still had some ongoing discussions. Those ongoing discussions where they were exploring how they were going to make the guidance that came out from the Ag Department and the Health Department fit with their market. They were exploring if they had enough personnel to manage it appropriately, or to go to some type of an online or a pickup or a delivery option, which is what a number of markets are really considering, because that's what consumers are kind of seeking out, as you'll learn later on. But that was the big survey results that we got. But we also asked a few other things just to try to get an idea of how they were reacting in response to COVID. A number of them, 18% of the respondents, said that they had planned to either reduce their hours or reduce their days of operation. And again, I'm thinking that they're trying to think, well, okay, we can operate, but given all the guidance, all the social distance guidance, maybe we need to restrict our time and really focus with some concentrated areas. 56% would limit customers that are in the market area. 33% we're going to have to limit the number of vendors and farmers. 11% said that they would allow only online sales. And I think almost all of those were trying to go to some type of a curbside pickup or almost like a drive-through type of a model. And so that's what we've seen as these markets have responded. But then we had another question. We had told the respondents to check as many as they would, that would apply. So they could have for multiple options. Roughly half of the respondents checked something in this and added their own language for these areas. And these are the broad categories that a number of them are actually going to expand their days of operation, expand their times and offerings to engage with consumers. In accordance with the guidance, a number talked about setting up and encouraging both hand washing and sanitizing stations, not just for the customers, but for their vendors, to actively manage social distancing, including trying to limit entry into the market area. A number of the markets talked about trying to offer drive-through, some type of a drive-through or curbside pickup setup. A few mentioned talking of going to prepackaged items. This was beyond just the pickup, but trying to prepackage some of those items. And then a few talked about establishing detailed protocols for delivery, for order packing, and for order pickup. And again, I think those were in response to trying to address some consumer perceptions and to not only adhere to the guidance, but to also maintain some confidence with their shoppers. We also asked, thinking that SNAP might be an area, both SNAP, which is a supplemental nutrition assistance program, would be an area that markets might look to try to enhance or leverage sales opportunities. A little over half currently accept SNAP benefits. We tried to reach out to all the respondents and encourage them and gave them the information for SNAP sign up. I think the Double Up Food Bucks program has expired, but we shared that information as well as a grant program on getting some equipment if you're interested in signing up for SNAP. And that was in an effort to try to encourage nutrition assistance. One of the issues that we see that unemployment numbers are approaching, they suspect 20% in the coming months, but there's a number of people that are seeking some public assistance and are concerned about where they're going to get their food, their nutrition. So what we've seen is a little over half of the markets currently accept SNAP benefits. We try to promote some additional signups in that space and come in collaboration with Jeremy Adams and AFMA. 33% offered online sales now in some capacity. I think some of them were just online promotions because 11% offered or indicated that they were planning to go online only. And we asked if you had an online platform, please provide us that information so that we can help promote it. And these were the platforms that we saw across those 45 markets that were being used. Facebook, Google.com, What's Good, locallygrown.net, and then Square. I'm vaguely familiar with all of them, but not in depth on any of them. But we have seen a number of not just markets, but farms trying to go to some type of an online transaction model. Again, as we see the consumer supported ag or the delivery or pickup option, seeing great and intense interest as markets are trying to adjust throughout this time. So farmers market strategies, just wanted to talk a little bit about what's going on with farmers markets as far as a trend. ERS did a study in 2015 looking at growth of local food systems. And so farmers markets up almost, and I apologize, I didn't update that figure, but it's 112 markets shown in AMS website now. Food hubs up over 250% since 2007. And then you see a lot of farm to school. We know that the schools are not in session right now. But what we're seeing is there are significant purchases in households that were in these institutions that are now taking place in these households. So I've heard anecdotally from some of our direct marketing farmers that they have increased sales. One farmer told me, I'm selling everything I can get out of the field. That's exciting for me to hear. This gentleman offers a roadside stand. I talked to a couple of others that said that their sales were robust and they saw lots of activity, lots of visits to their farm. I haven't talked to market vendors in detail yet, but I hope to hear and learn on this conversation today. But as we see tremendous growth in these local food systems, the thing I want you to be aware is that as social distancing guidelines begin to reside is, will we still see this tremendous growth or interest? I know in my household, we have gone increased with trying to identify local, and I know a number of people that are seeking those out. But one of the reasons I wanted to show you that growth in local food systems is just to give a little backdrop on some of the other strategies that are being used. So as a result of all the growth, USDA did a local food marketing practices survey in 2015, and they're working on an additional local foods practices survey. I know these were pre-COVID, but I wanted to share this information and have it be part of the presentation because hopefully after this crisis passes, we'll get back to some sense of normalcy or whatever the new normal is. It's good to have these benchmarks to understand some of the strategies that we would want to implement as we go forward. Arkansas did not get its own state-specific report. It was part of a Region 5, which included Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and Texas. But what they were doing was attempting to talk about some of these direct marketing or local foods channels. So if you saw in the census, they're starting to track the metric of direct to institution in addition to direct to consumers so that we can have a better grasp of what's going on in that space. How many farms, what's the economic activity that is there? But they've said across this Region 5 of those in that survey, it was roughly half direct to consumer versus direct to institution, being the institutions and the intermediaries. The thing that really stood out as I looked at that data is that 68% of those direct marketing farmers have some type of value added activity as part of their farming operations. They're looking at value added in terms of packaging, in terms of processing, but also even in terms of the brand of promoting, because even locals consider the brand. This survey was the first ever conducted. Ag Statistics Service developed that to get this benchmark data out, and they're in the process of trying to do a second study on the local foods marketing and a practices survey to again get those national benchmarks to help guide best management practices and what's going on. As we look in those direct marketing channels, just to give those percentages, just to show where farmers markets stand within that space, they were the dominant direct to consumer sales as we looked at some of the other avenues that were offered. But we also saw the CSA model, which has seen tremendous interest as a result of COVID. I've gotten a number of calls about how to interact, not just in Arkansas, but across the region on how to set up this community supported agriculture, which is what CSA stands for, but it's in a way of getting a routine and a repeat customer, almost like a magazine subscription. You pay a fee and you get a routine delivery, pre-packaged, pre-boxed. You come by and it's a pickup or a curbside pickup or a delivery type of a setup. Have our traditional roadside stands and on-site farm stands, but we also have some online and some other avenues that they were using for direct to consumer sales. The thing that I'll highlight as you go through, even in this crisis time, that as we think about marketing strategies, marketing is an ongoing process. And most of the farms that are selling at the farmers markets, most of those vendors are small and are mid-sized producers. It's important that they differentiate their products and not compete on price. We've seen that in past where you have some price competition, and at the end of the day, when you're competing on price alone, the farmers, all the farmers will again, they will end up in a worse economic setting than had they competed in different ways. So the thing I really highlight is that as market managers, to encourage your vendors to differentiate in different ways versus saying I'm the low price leader. Talk about or tell your story in terms of how your product is produced. Talk about how your family and why your family produces. All those things resonate with consumers. And even that you're a local family farm is even resonating even more so as people seek to connect and try to support local businesses. So encourage you to make those connections with their customers, because it will indeed encourage and have repeat customers. Always promote the Arkansas Grown program from the Arkansas Ag Department as a brand to help identify that local, what's grown in Arkansas and Arkansas farmers. I know we have a couple of people from the Ag Department on here, but I've always integrated that into my marketing program, because you'd be surprised that a number of consumers are not familiar with how to identify locally grown products. Even in a rural state like Arkansas, there's a number of people that miss some of the connections of what's local and what's available locally. And again, in this time, intentionally be strategic as you use some of your social connections and social platforms to market your programs and promote your brand on your farms. So just talking specifically, just briefly about local marketing strategies as we look across farmers markets. There's enhanced direct marketing channels as consumers are seeking out these opportunities to get products directly. Look at explore those opportunities for value added and differentiated focus in terms of your products and your branding. And it's important that I always call it relationship marketing. Is that if I'm a farmer, it's important for me to develop that relationship with my customer across from the table or across from that vendor booth at that market, and have that consistent relationship in terms of the conversation and transparency, that it resonates. And so that will encourage that customer to come back and be a repeat customer. There's niche marketing or targeted marketing strategies that we're often trying to highlight, because how do you build a path to your store or your storefront or your booth, is you have to make some of those connections. And I really highlight, because we're just overwhelmed with the internet, there's an overwhelming amount of information out there, is that oftentimes our marketing tactics become part of an educational tactic. And so Don't assume that your consumers understand how to use a certain product. So provide them recipes, provide them some additional information to help them understand some of those food facts versus marketing, and incorporate that into your marketing programs. Just three areas I always talk about, and again, I just mentioned a little bit, is the building your brand. Even as a small scale farmer only selling at a farmer's market, you'll have a brand, and customers will reach out and make those connections with you. The importance of connecting with customers across multiple platforms. You connect with them directly at the market, but you can also build relationships to promote your social engagement, social platforms. And one thing that I've been encouraging is even in the face of COVID, even if sales at the farmers market aren't as robust as they have historically been, if you operate a farm stand, maybe use that farm stand as a marketing opportunity to promote your availability of products that you have. And again, lastly, as far as a strategy, we always want to communicate transparently in terms of branding, like the Arkansas grown. If you're using organic, or if you're using non-GMO practices, seek what those labels and that branding, and be consistent in the use of those. Some farmers market resources, just highlighting those resources that are available in Arkansas. And I just wanted to just promote the ones that I've collaborated with and I've used here in the state of Arkansas. So Arkansas MarketMaker, the program that is developed and offered by the University of Arkansas. There's the Arkansas Farmers Market Association, which is an association of market managers. I think they've expanded that out to actually have beyond market managers with some of their recent changes lately. But they're an advocate for farmers markets across the state, but have a nice listserv, and is a great opportunity to learn of things that are working and things that maybe have been tried and didn't work. This is a great network, and I would encourage any market manager on this call to reach out and connect with that association, or any stakeholder that's a farmers market supporter, to engage. The Ag Department has their Arkansas Grown and their Arkansas Made website. Again, I encourage that branding, because it's important to help that consumers understand that you are a local producer, you're an Arkansas producer. And then a program that has just recently launched in response or as part of COVID is the Uplift Arkansas. It's got a whole host of food market outlets, both direct, some value added. It's had a number of businesses there, but it's also a great avenue for our markets and our farmers to engage as you look to seek promotional opportunities for your farmers markets. A quick slide on MarketMaker. If you're not familiar with it, it's free. Online direct marketing, it's a platform, so it's a tool, but across the entire food system, it allows you to register and come up with an online profile. One of the questions I saw from Uplift Arkansas was that you had to, or you needed to have a website. Well, MarketMaker, if you're registered, that will allow you to get a website if that was indeed what was happening. But what MarketMaker does, it's a platform that allows those producers and those businesses to promote their markets and the markets that they serve. It helps those business owners connect with other players within the food supply chain. But more importantly, and most importantly, it helps consumers find fresh and locally grown food items. We do have a web-based application that is aligned with this, but it helps, basically MarketMaker helps to connect producers, markets, and food lovers, again, in that local space. And it is a multi-state platform that allows you to connect and get some promotion through the university. It's GIS driven, so it has a mapping feature, as does Arkansas Grown, as does Uplift Arkansas, to help people easily identify the locations that they can see their markets. Continuing local food resources. Nationally, there's local food economics. If you're looking for some pricing information or some directories, there is a pricing, it's both local and regional food markets. There's an organic listing there for organic prices. And then there's some terminal markets, which helps get in more into the wholesale distribution system, but some good pricing information for reference points. And then there's some online marketing links. This is just a snapshot of some of the tools, some of the programs that are available on that local food economics website, including some benchmarks and some strategies. And again, hopefully, as we come out of this crisis, some of these tactics will become back and be more prevalent as we return to more normalcy within our marketing options. This is some specific information on pricing. Again, available at AMS's website, where they have attempted, largely as a result of the growth in local food, trying to attempt to get more data and more processes and systems out there to allow people to evaluate where they are and to look strategically at how they grow in some of these various local and regional food systems. And then lastly, there's a link where USDA maintains, I talked about earlier, the 112 farmers markets that they show. It also shows some on-farm markets, some CSAs, and some food hubs across the country. And again, they have that mapped as well, or that mapping feature with their local food directory listing. The last few slides I just want to touch base on is just consumer perceptions, because this whole issue, this crisis, it's a people issue, and consumers and their consumer confidence is going to be what drives. So even as they start to open back the economy up, as consumers don't have confidence, it's going to be a slow process. So I wanted to give you some insights on consumer perceptions and some COVID-19 reactions. These next couple of slides come from American Farm Bureau, just talking about where consumption or where purchases are made. I know this slide's a little busy, and I'm sorry, I'm an economist, I like figures. But it shows that food purchases, it's a $1.7 trillion industry. The thing from this figure, it goes up to 2018, is that prior to COVID, you see that restaurants, so food away from home purchases had exceeded or surpassed food from home. So 2015, as we seek out convenience, as we seek out restaurants, full-time and limited service, and other food away from home venues, that surpassed grocery store, warehouse and clubs and outlets, those types of venues. What COVID did is COVID reversed that. It's unknown when we'll return back to see if this trend continues once social distancing is removed. But right now, because restaurants have been limited, I know in Arkansas they're starting to open back up. But so the grocery stores have seen tremendous growth. Direct and online markets have seen substantial, significant growth. But as we return back to normalcy, as social distancing reduces, will we get back on this timeline? But the thing I wanted to highlight is just where those various areas were, and also to highlight where those direct farm sales fit within that scope as food at home expenditures. And food at home is calculated as when the sale is directly to the consumer. So these are the categories: grocery stores, warehouse supercenters, then the other areas being delivery and other areas of getting or securing your food items. The thing I wanted to talk about, this is food at home. Something to think about as we look that food at home has surpassed or come back temporarily. I want to share this slide that talks about who is the average spending on the food away from home, because these shoppers are now purchasing for consumption at home. And you see the Gen X, that generation are the major spenders. And so as you think about your market, so you think about in your area, what is the population makeup of your consumers within your local areas? Are there opportunities? Are there possible customers that you may be missing out on, or have you marketed to them adequately? And so I just wanted to give you that little bit of background just from a strategic standpoint as to who's spending on the food away from home, because these consumers are primarily purchasing for at-home consumption. A few slides on consumer perceptions as we look to see what's going to be the result as COVID continues, and we don't know what that timeline is. But what we're seeing is temporary growth in food delivery and online services. I've seen anecdotally tremendous interest in community-supported agriculture models, seeing a lot of interest from both farms and farmers markets to go to online, to some type of delivery or curbside pickup model. We'll see as the social distancing guidelines ease, will these trends maintain? In terms of consumer perception, There was a Brownfield Ag News that did a survey in April 2020, and it revealed that Americans were more concerned about their food availability versus food safety, with 77% concerned about availability. And this was before we had the major instances in some of the meat manufacturers, followed by affordability. Number of people, 1/3, changed where they shop for food. Also looked at additional cleaning their produce in their packaging. This was a national survey of U.S. representative shoppers done by Brownfield Ag News. Additional survey by the Hartman Group looked at changes in grocery shopping patterns or food shopping patterns. Again, a nationally representative survey across the U.S. done in April. And almost 40% said that their shopping trips got faster. Wherever they were shopping to get their food item, they were spending less time there. 35% were shopping at fewer stores, picking one or two to really highlight to get almost all of their items. And they were spending more money on each visit, roughly 29%. 23%, only one person in the household was doing the shopping, reducing those opportunities for exposure. Additional 23% was doing more shopping online. So these were some of the changes in shopping patterns that may or may not impact some of the shopping at farmers markets. Wanted to share those national surveys, again done in April, across the U.S. 17% were spending more of their money online, which we've seen. As social distancing eases, will those trends maintain and continue? And so I'll get ready to close. I just want to close that one of the things just to highlight, because I know that this is trying times and we're all in this, and they say that we're all in this same storm. And we all are in the same storm, but it's important for us to remember that, and I like to describe when they say we're in the same storm, but we're all in different ships. Some ships have crashed. Some ships are doing just fine. They're floating along and they're doing well with no economic impact, no health impacts. I know even across Extension, and a couple of my friends have gotten the COVID, have gotten the coronavirus. They're doing well now, but even in these times of uncertainty, it's important that we're a core component of agriculture. Going back to George Washington says, the most healthful, most useful, and most noble employment of man. We're gonna get through this, and we don't know what the new normal is going to be, but we're going to get through this. So I'll stop right there.
Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Dr. Rainey. We appreciate your those nice words of wisdom there at the end, and of course all of your results and findings, survey results. Those are very informative. It's a lot of information. I do remind everybody we will have this recorded, so if you want to go back and revisit these, I think it's fascinating to see how this virus is really changing all of our lives, even if it is only temporary, just to see changing in shopping patterns and behaviors and how we consume. And, you know, it is beyond just farmers markets. It is grocery store, retail. It's touching every aspect of the food world. But we do, you know, want to remember that it is affecting these farmer markets. And so that's why we decided to invite along one of our local market managers here in Arkansas, Miss Teresa Maurer. I think I got her name right there.
Did?
Yes. And so we appreciate you, Ron, for sort of giving us that overall big picture, but now we want to go ahead and kind of bring it down a little bit more to the ground level here. And Teresa, I'm going to go ahead and pull up your presentation that you sent to me. And by the way, Dr. Rainey, I know that you had, you might need to step away for a bit. That's fine. Did anyone have any questions now in the middle period here for him about any of his presentation? Just feel free to unmute and ask that if you did. And if not, you can always put it in the chat. We can get to it later. And we will have some time at the end of this discussion too as well to go over that. All right, can you guys see that screen there?
Yep, Rip, it's showing.
Okay, thank you. So Teresa, if you just let me know when you need to go to the next slide, I'll do that for you. And as I said, Teresa Maurer, she is the co-manager and vendor coordinator for the Fayetteville Farmers Market. She's going to give us a little bit of insight in how their markets responded to COVID-19. And I do want to share that, as I've said, she is a co-manager. She does have a fellow manager up there, Leanne Halsey, who is also a co-manager, but Leanne handles more of their business coordination and actually was doing a lot of their accounting today, so couldn't make it to this presentation, but we're very excited to have Teresa with us, and I look forward to hearing what she has to say. So Teresa, are you ready for the?
I'm ready, and everybody excuse me, I'm gonna just let Rip control the slides. So we'll go to the first slide.
All right, so just excuse our her directions here.
Right. I wanted to just say that normally the Fayetteville Farmers Market is a year-round market, open for 8 months per year on the downtown Fayetteville Square with thousands of customers. And then during the winter, we move inside to a much smaller market. And I just wanted to give you that as context. In late March, just before our opening day, just days literally before our opening day, the Fayetteville Square, which is a public park, was closed to the market. So we had to kind of spin on our heel, and in some ways having a winter market at another location was a real asset for us. We have a local shopping center here, Evelyn Hills Shopping Center, and we had rented some vacant space for the winter. And we simply asked them if it was okay if we could operate outdoors in their parking lot. Not as scenic, not as, not offering some of the amenities of the square, but it was something we could have access to within days of opening day. At that same time in March, before things shut down, we were already piloting a small test of online market ordering and pickup. And that was in the, I guess for the 2 weeks in March that we did that, I think we got 40 orders and then 60 orders. And I'll tell you what happened in April in a later slide. But what we did is we ramped that up so that we could go ahead and function fully with that online market. So I'm first going to talk about, next slide. Go ahead, Rip, there we go. So we had to let people know that there was a change in where the market was located. So these are some of our initial publicity points that we worked out. And, all along we were kind of checking the Healthy Arkansas site for, what guidance was coming down for farmers markets, how could we operate within those guidelines. So this is kind of what we came up with for initial publicity. We had to tell people that we were not at the square, we were in that parking lot. We kept our hours from 7 till 1, slightly shorter than our normal Saturday hours. We did set aside a senior only hour. Vendors are set up outside with ample spacing. You'll see that in a picture in a few minutes to accommodate social distancing, not just with customers, but also between vendors. And we had hand wash stations set up at the entrances to our parking lot market. Vendors are limited to selling farm products and items listed as essential. So we had to let people know that. Customers were asked to be aware of distancing. Vendors packaged all products, so customers don't handle the products or touch them until the purchase is completed. So even though they might be displayed in a basket or something like that, the vendor would handle that and hand it to the customer at the time of transaction. And then we also, as much as possible, tried to help vendors figure out how to implement safe cash handling, like with a box or a jar where a customer could put the money in and that, or take credit cards, sort of minimize the cash handling. Next slide. Okay, this is the way the market is set up in the parking lot. You can see the spacing. I think I'll have another slide, but you can see the spacing between vendors. And then we have a big wide avenue, there's actually a second row of vendors that you can't see off to the left. So we have two long rows of anywhere from 8 to 12 vendors on a side. So the maximum numbers of vendors that we've had at this point are 24, compared with a normal Saturday market of 70. I think ideally, and we're still rethinking this a little bit, we would have liked to have done a flow that kept customers from facing each other. But with our layout, the way we handled that was we kept the two rows of vendor booths far apart on either side. So there was plenty of room for people to pass each other. Ideally, I think you'd want people kind of circulating in one direction if you could. Next slide. This is just a reminder that in April, we had some rain. We are an all-weather market, so we set up rain or shine. Next slide. This is a close-up of a parking space. So it's like two parking spaces back to back. The customer stands in the front. There's that number 7 is the number of the space, not the 7 feet. But that's 6 feet from where the customer stands to the front of the display, which is that second line further back. So we tried to give that as guidance for setup for the vendors and for where customers can stand. Next slide. Okay, this is just another view on another day, but what I wanted to show, vendors could use tables to kind of distance themselves again from the customer. So this vendor in the front was kind of showing how she was using tables to put distance between herself and the customers. So the customer would be standing again back where that little A-frame sign is and talking to the vendor. And then at transaction, of course, they'd have to move up and take the product. Next slide. I wanted to show you some pictures of what we're asking vendors too. So here the products are displayed, but once again, before the customer touches the product, the vendor is actually packaging it. So, and you can see this vendor has a mask and has gloves on. Next slide. Another vendor just showing their COVID safe display area. Another thing we tried to do was ask people not to have tablecloths so that the tabletops were easily sanitizable. So that was another thing we asked people to do. Next slide. This is just another slide showing a close-up of a vendor working with a mask and gloves. So some of the things we observed about the walk-up market, obviously there were new vendor rules for displays, for masks for them, for gloves. Probably the biggest things we've had to deal with are changing the expectations and behaviors of the customers. So they had to come and find us in a new place. They had to, keep socially distant. We did increase monitoring at entrances, offering people opportunities to put on gloves or sanitize. I think the managers, as on-site managers for this walk-up in-person market, we've had to continually do education of customers about sanitation, dispersing groups. We still have, groups of 6 or 8 showing up. That's what they used to do at our Saturday market. So that's when they saw that we were open again, that's what some of them expected to do again. So that's been kind of a hard thing, but we've said, please limit your group size. And this is a shop and leave sort of philosophy. We want you to get in, be able to get your products, and then not spend time on the market site. That keeps us in line with some of the social distancing and numbers of people present in a particular area. Next slide. So some of the impacts. Normally our market in the outdoor season is a Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday market. So right away we reduced our days of operation from 3 times a week to once a week, to Saturday only. Vendors with crafts, ready-to-eat products, and until last week, cut flowers were excluded from in-person markets by the state health department guidance. So, and again, I'll tell you how we tried to respond to that situation. Our total number of vendors at market was down by about 70% compared to an average Saturday. So like I said, I think we've had about 24 growers participating, and we also were allowed to sell soap as an essential product, but that was the only craft vendor that was allowed to sell. So compared with 70 to 73 vendors on a Saturday, we're sitting at about 24 right now. Now that will increase as the fruit starts to come in and different products start to come in. We'll see greater vendor attendance, but there's still, limitations on what can be sold at market. I would estimate that our total customer numbers are 5% of an average Saturday on the square. We've done counts on the square of 5,000 to 10,000 people at our market on a Saturday. So, those customers are way down, but on the other side of that, the customers that are coming to our walk-up market are buying. They're, we don't have the socializing going on. And so the people that are taking the time and effort to come to the market are there to buy. So for some of our market members, like the crafters and the other folks, the ready to eat products, things that are eaten right there at market, we really needed to ramp up that online market so that they would have a place to sell their products. So testing of a system that we were saying, we got 40 orders and then 60 orders, we fast-tracked that. And in the first week that we opened it up more broadly, it went up to 120 orders and then was doubling. And we as you'll hear a little bit later, we found our maximum in being able to serve online customers is about 400 on a Saturday. And I'll get back to that. Okay, next slide. So this is, I know it's small print, but the online system that we were testing, and I'm not doing an advertisement for this particular, there's a lot of different ways to go with online, but this is one that I know Stacy's on the call. Thank you, Stacy, for your help in introducing us to this tool. We were already planning to do this even before COVID, and we just had to kind of crash course and get it up online. This is locallygrown.net, and this is our particular Fayetteville, Arkansas site. So next slide. So this is just an introduction to what the customer sees. And then again, I'm sorry for the small print, but on the left side, you can see the categories of items that includes both farm items, craft items, value-added products, and so on. So a grower or a seller, as we like to call it, because it's beyond growers, has to get on and put their products on the site, which was a challenge for some of our folks that, maybe have limited internet use or, restrictions on what they can get up there. So as managers and as market staff, we had to help people get over that hurdle. So they listed on the site, they list their availability that week, and then customers have the chance to order those products from noon Tuesday until 9 p.m. on Thursday. The orders close, and then the growers essentially have about 24 hours to harvest and package the food to get ready for the pickup on Saturday. So next slide. So we weren't able to see our vendors in person. Actually, the last time we saw everybody was at a membership meeting that happened just before the close down. So we had to train them remotely. So myself and a couple of the other market folks would get on the phone and try to lead people through this online marketing system, which was a challenge. But, they got through it, and we now have about 50 vendors that are listed on the site. Some of them are not selling quite yet, but we have 50 of our 100 members actually set up to sell online, whether they're there yet or not. Selling is, some will be ramping up later. Vendors have to spend more time on harvest day, so they're not just harvesting to bring things to market. They have to sort, package, and label the products properly for delivery on Saturday morning. What we discovered was a huge increase in market staff and needs for helpers required to prepare for and operate customer pickup, customer service, and accounting. So that was kind of the cost side on the market in order to be able to offer this service. But we wanted those sales for people to be greater than zero. We knew we weren't going to get back to a 5,000 person square market anytime soon. So we felt like this was another avenue in addition to the small online walk-up market. Next slide. Okay, so I thought you'd like to sort of see a little bit of the, kind of how we had to bootstrap this thing up. This is where we had our indoor market in the winter from December to March, and we just turned it into a big sort of product aggregation assembly site. So on Friday, the invoices are printed out. And again, we found just for time and space limitations, we could handle 400 customers. So if you walk through 3 rooms, you'd see 400 bags set up, and there's table space for things like plants and all the variety of things that people can order. And then you can't see it, I didn't take a picture of it, but we also have a refrigeration and freezer area in the front of the space that is delivered on Saturday morning. Next slide. This is the outside part of the arrangement at pickup. We have people that pack the bags starting at 5:30, well, some on Friday night for non-perishable things, and then from 5:30 to 8:30 on Saturday morning, the rest of the packing is done. And then we have a person that brings the bag and the products from inside to outside. We call them runners, and they stop at the refrigeration station to add those perishable products at the, as it's brought out to the customer. Again, you can't see it very well, but on the right side of the slide up against the building are the cut flowers. The online market was the only way until this week that we could sell those cut flowers. So once again, in addition to the refrigerated products, the cut flower product would be added. And these are the cashier stations. Some of them are not doing a very good job of socially distancing, but part of that is because of the view of the particular picture that was taken. You can see they're gloved and masked, and we try to enforce indoors and outside and outdoors the social distancing. Then the next slide will show you, there's one of our people that's bringing the bag from inside to outside, and there's a person adding the flower order in. And then the next slide. This is a customer that's pulling up and letting our dispatcher, who's standing back in the line of cars, letting the folks up front by the building know who's coming up to pick up their order. And this is the actual, there's anywhere from 4 to 5 lanes of traffic. You can see in that orange car in the middle, there's a helper that is putting the items in the back seat of the customer. So again, we're trying to really keep the social distancing in the delivery of the product, even on the online side of things. And the table there in the front is where there's a last check done to make sure the order's complete before it's taken to the customer. Okay, next slide. I mentioned the cut flowers. One of the things that I actually ended up being involved with personally was to appeal to the health department and the ag department that cut flowers could be sold up at our walk-up market. I think the concern at the state level was people waiting around in lines, crowds of people waiting around in lines for custom bouquets to be made. And I guess the point I made is that we had been selling strawberries, which are also a very popular product, and we were able to manage the social distancing and the lines for that product. And I made an argument that if we could pre-make the cut flowers and handle them in a COVID safe way, that we should be allowed to sell cut flowers at the walk-up market. And we did receive permission to do that. And this was the publicity that went on our Facebook page to let customers know, this is, yes, you can get cut flowers, but you can't, ask people for a custom bouquet. You've got to point to the bouquet and then get handed the bouquet. And so, these are the things that we put in place to be able to sell those cut flowers. Our small farmers in the spring have a significant portion of their business. A number of them have added cut flowers to their operation, so the prohibition on selling those at the walk-up market was really hurting them. So we just wanted to figure out a way that we could be COVID safe and still be able to offer that product at market. So that's what we did. That was our publicity online and other places about what customers and people could expect at the walk-up market with respect to cut flowers. Next slide. Okay, so here are some observations for our online, our little more than 6 weeks experience with online market. Some vendors are still struggling, especially some of our vendors where English is not their first language. Thinking about alphabetizing by customers was a real struggle for them. And we ask the vendors, the growers, to deliver their products packaged, labeled, and alphabetized, so that the people at the packing part would have an easy time to pair up the invoice and the product, because those bags are all in alphabetical order too. So we had some struggles with people with that. On-site payment at pickup was too time consuming. In other words, in the first week or two, we allowed people to order and then offered them the chance to pay at pickup with a credit card. It was too time consuming, tied up the line too much. And so we now require prepayment or provision of funds into an account before they can make a purchase. We also had to work out SNAP systems, which we have done. So SNAP participants can continue to participate in both the walk-up market and the online market. So we had to do some creativity with that, but we have been successful at that. A 5-hour pickup window on Saturday from 10 to 3 requires time from 20 to 25 people in shifts from 5:30 until 4 on Saturday to make that work. Again, keeping the right number of people indoors, people spaced outdoors, but that's what it takes. And thank goodness we've had people willing to jump in and help. Those are not paid staff. Those are people that out of the goodness of their heart are coming and helping us with that pretty strenuous delivery. So you think from 10 to 3, like I said, we found that our max is about 400 orders. So we're handling 90 orders per hour. So that's a lot of throughput. And that's what I was saying in that fifth bullet or fourth bullet there, that we had to limit to stay within our space and time limitations. The other thing, vendors have to wait for payment. So the money flows into an online accounting system. Then there's a resolution that happens between, so if something is missing at pickup, then the customer is not charged for that. And Monday's the day when all those accounts are kind of brought in line. And then the transfers are made from the online account to our bank account and then on to the vendor. So there is a waiting time that we're trying to cut down with some electronic payment transfer for the vendors. Next slide. Again, some of the observations, it did allow sales by our market members who have crafts and other products that were restricted at the in-person market. It gave faithful market customers another way to purchase market products. And it provides some very useful information that we've never really had before about online customer preferences and product choices. I would say I haven't looked at the customers have to register to be able to order online. It seems to me like we were at about 1,500 to 2,000 online customers in the 6 weeks that we've been operating that. That's not orders, but that's different people that have signed up to be able to shop online. Whether they actually pay an order, you know, is a little smaller percentage. But it's still very useful information. It gives us a way to contact them. Remind them about the order details, let them know what's new on the online market, all of those kinds of things. So let's see, I think that might be my last slide. So those are some sort of on the ground, boots on the ground observations about both our walk-up and our online market in this COVID season of COVID, I guess. And again, I think I was asked before the presentation started if there's a greater interest in direct sales. I think there is, but we aren't, I think there are still many customers that are choosing a true home delivery option, or, you know, they're working on other kinds of pickup options. But I think what we're seeing here is the real solid customer base for our market. And you know, I think we're gonna see that grow and hopefully maintain their patronage as we work through this. It's not thousands of people, but I think we're getting down to the people that are purchasing at market rather than using it as a social time. The social time is very valuable, but unfortunately right now with the virus situation, the Fayetteville Farmers Market can't function that way. It's got to function as a true local food shopping experience. And that's been a rough one, I think, for some of our customers to handle and for us to get used to. You know, I and the other market staff have to do a lot more patrolling and monitoring than we had to do at our other market. I guess a different kind of monitoring, just to keep everybody safe. And as we point out to people, your responsibility as a customer is as much as ours for making this market continue to operate safely. So those are just a few observations. I didn't have a lot of time to put together a lot of other data, but thought you'd like to hear about our experiences up here in Fayetteville. That's it.
Teresa, thank you. We appreciate all that insight and information that you provided. I think it's very useful to hear about what all you all are doing in the day-to-day running and management of your market. I was glad to hear that you had some good help. I think I actually volunteered with one of the local food organizations here in Little Rock, just because I felt the desire to do that. I also think it was neat that you highlighted about the cut flowers. We had a few questions coming into extension about that. So I was glad to hear that you were able to appeal for change there. So it just sort of proves how this is fluid, or can be fluid at some level. We do have some questions that have come through. Amanda, I don't know if there was anything you wanted to highlight in particular there, but I'm going to go ahead and now turn it over to Amanda to sort of lead our discussion piece. But again, thanks to both of our presenters for their information and sharing with us their experiences.
All right, thank you, Rip. Thank you for your leadership in getting this together and for facilitating today. And Ron, thank you so much for the detail that you provided about what's happening in the market space, the data that you've looked into. That was really, really helpful and insightful. And Teresa, wow, you guys have really adapted. You've just been one thing after another. You're just picking it up and figuring it out moment by moment. So congratulations on that. And thank you for putting these slides together. You say it's just a little bit, but I think everyone on today's meeting will say that was really, really helpful. So invaluable information. So thank you both for providing that. And, we'll start with questions. I know there's some in the chat. I'm kind of delaying because I'm trying to have someone hop on the call that can talk about SNAP real quick. So I'll get to that one in just a second. But are there any other questions beyond SNAP? I know that's a really important one right now. People are trying to figure out how to get the online SNAP sales going. I don't know if, Teresa, if you want to talk about how you guys were able to get SNAP in the online market, that would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a hybrid. So there's actually some personal contact. There's a way for SNAP customers online to let us know that they are a SNAP customer. And then one of our market staff contacts them and explains what they need to do. If they have SNAP tokens, or up here in Fayetteville, we have a Double Your Dollars program, which are cards. So if they already have those, there's a special place where they can walk up and turn those in and make their online purchase. So that's the exception. So it still is a bit of a manual process. I know that there are some other states that have maybe worked out a little bit more of a direct SNAP online system. We don't have that yet. But anyway, we were able to work it out. Also, if a customer did not have tokens or market cards, they could come to the walk-up market. They'd be directed to go to the online or to the walk-up market, and we would give them their SNAP dollars as well as their matching cards. That we have a Double Your Dollars that will double SNAP benefits up to $75 in a visit to the market. So it helps their dollars go further. That's Walmart Foundation, some funding that our Northwest Arkansas markets have. So I hope that sort of hits your question a little bit.
I think so. Did anyone have any follow-up questions for Teresa on that? Is that something that people think is manageable, something that you can do? Or, I mean, I don't, you may not have the volunteer support. Oh, go ahead.
I have a question. This is Sandy from St. Joseph's. And
Hey,
again, we've been struggling with how to adapt for our SNAP customers. Our platform does not allow online purchases to be made without payment at that moment. And so I guess, Teresa, are you able to see the orders for your SNAP clients in advance, or do you have to wait until you are able to do that? Okay.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And actually, my co-manager, Leanne, has been much more involved with the details of that. But Sandy, if I can get your email, then we could send you how we're handling that. But this particular application, the locally grown, again, I'm not plugging for it, but it was a tool that we had that we could get up quickly. It allows the growers and market managers to see the orders as they come in. And there's certain information that comes along with those orders in terms of the kind of customer. So if it's a SNAP customer, there's a flag there, and then they are personally contacted, and we work out the manual part of the operation. So there's no way for a SNAP customer to use an EBT card directly online with that system. But yeah, get in touch with me, and I'll get you in touch with Leanne about how we do that.
Fabulous. Thank you.
I will say that on the state level, you may have seen, if you are on any of the USDA updates, that some states have created an online SNAP program. And so Arkansas is actually in the process of working on that. I've been communicating with Melissa Terry, who's up in the Fayetteville area, and a few others to try to figure out how Arkansas can take advantage of the pilot program for doing SNAP online. And I had reached out to her because we were supposed to meet this week to talk about that program, and she's trying to get a way to hop on and to kind of talk about it today. But if we don't have time today, we may have her be one of the speakers at one of our upcoming meetings to just kind of walk through how to get that going and what the timeline might be for actually if Arkansas can have a full online SNAP program. So I know I've seen at least 3 or 4 states that have done it. Through some of the USDA updates that have come out. So it's possible for online SNAP to happen. We just have to, I don't know what the barriers are in Arkansas yet. So I know Melissa Terry and a few others that are with the Access to Healthy Food group. And I don't, if there's anybody on this call that's working on that, I'm not sure, but I know that there is an effort to work on getting online SNAP. So we'll try to update you as soon as possible on that. In regards to the farmers market guidance, Sarah Lane is going to check on that. So the Ag Department, or the Department of Health and the Department of Agriculture, both put support into the farmers market guidance. And I'm not sure what the timeline is on providing an update on that. Sarah, do you have any news?
Yeah, I just got off the phone with the Deputy Secretary. So yes, cut flowers are allowed across the state. There wasn't a formal memo that went out about that, but it did go through some listservs. So yes, all markets can offer pre-cut flower packages. As for guidance from the Department of Health, we aren't aware currently of any updates to the guidance, but we would be like totally willing to, if there's certain suggestions that market managers have, or others on this call that would like those to be considered if guidance is coming out from the Department of Health, I'm happy to compile those and share. As of now, no crafts, just agricultural products, making sure people are wearing masks, and that there's 6 feet apart, limited numbers, that there's hand washing stations or hand sanitizer. But if you have specific questions or suggestions, I'll put my email in the chat, and you can direct those to me, and I'll compile all those so that if we're working with ADH in the coming days and weeks, we can try to get those included in the guidance.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Doesn't look like Melissa has been able to get on, but I think what we'll do is try to reach out to her and see if she would be available for our next local foods discussion. So we have talked with Sarah Lane, and I'm just going to share screen real quick to share what our next discussion is going to be. So it's going to be the food access map that if you're on their listserv, you've probably seen announcements that it's reached about 26,000 people to date. Sarah, I don't know how many resources are on there, but I mean, you can see all the dots. So Our next meeting was actually scheduled for May 25th, which is Memorial Day, and we will not be working that day. So we're going to shift the meeting to Tuesday, May 26th. So if you registered for that, we'll send you a new registration link for moving it to Tuesday if you're interested in participating. We'll also send it out through our listserv so you can register from there, probably sometime midweek. If you have not signed up for our newsletter, please put your email address in the chat box and we can add you, just so you get the information about the changing meeting day. And then Sarah and I both are reaching out to child nutrition directors to see if they can talk about what's happening with school meals and then farm to school during COVID as well. So if we're able to get one of our child nutrition directors on, then we'll have someone speak in regards to that. I'm also going to ask Melissa Terry if she's ready to talk about SNAP and online markets to prepare some slides for that as well, since that was an important topic for today. So are there any other topics that we need to help you with in working with local and regional food systems? Are there any other issues? I mean, the farmers market guidance, flowers, we've talked about, SNAP, online. One thing that we could offer in a couple of weeks is we have an individual who works for Extension and she works on farm stress. We could do a series on farm stress for how farms and farm businesses might be dealing with everything. Just as you pointed out, Teresa, I mean, even though there seems to be like a little peak in interest, it doesn't necessarily mean that the farms are getting all the sales that they would this time of year. So, so everything's really flexible right now and different and changing, and they may not be making the same income as they were before, which can be really stressful. And that's probably different for rural markets than it is for urban markets. I can imagine the rural markets are really struggling because we have several that weren't even planning on opening. And that can be probably pretty stressful for some of the farms. So that's an option. So farm stress, I don't know if you guys want to put ideas in the chat, we can look into that as well.
Amanda, this is Teresa. I know one question I've gotten as a manager is what kinds of loans or other relief might be available to small growers or some of our self-employed folks on the craft and food side of things. It's not something you need to answer today, but I know I just haven't had time to plow through all the announcements and see what's actually available to our market members and growers for that. So.
Yeah, definitely. I do know that there have been some things that have been put out there. You know, my husband's a realtor, so he's a small business owner, and he was doing that. He, I think, applied for the PPP and there's another one. I'm trying to keep up with all that stuff, but there are some funds out there available for small businesses. There's loans and then just like a stimulus payment, but they've ran out of money and had to re-up them. And so I don't know kind of what the status is, but we could reach out to other colleagues who work directly with economic development and small business and see if they would be willing to do a talk on that. So. All right, any other ideas? I think that'll keep us busy for a couple of weeks going forward. So thank you all for being on. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Rip for hosting, and then everyone who's provided resources or contributions to the chat. Looking forward to hearing from the Ag Department in regards to the work that they've been doing over the last, what has it been, 6 weeks now that we've been in this? So, and we'll talk on Tuesday, May 26th. Please, if you need anything, you know where to find us, and you can look for updates on our uaex.edu webpage. So take care, everybody, and stay safe.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Bye-bye.